Welcome back. Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels telling me this week consumers need a payroll tax holiday. He told me an interruption on impending regulations would be good for the economy. And given the opportunity, he would vote to repeal health care, Obamacare. As you know, Daniels is no stranger to Washington. He served as the budget director for George W. Bush. He was a senior advisor in Ronald Reagan's White House, and some speculate he may be the Republican presidential candidate for 2012. I began my conversation with the Indiana governor, focusing on the challenges facing the U.S. economy right now. Let me kick it off with sort of the issue of the day, and of course that is unemployment throughout the country, Indiana included. What do you think it is going to take to get businesses to create new jobs?
It's going to take a whole lot more certainty than we have today, and I really think that's got to come from Washington, Maria. The American consumer, quite correctly, I think, is going to continue to be cautious about spending and thoughtful about paying down the debts that have been accumulated. So, I think the first thing we're going to need to see is some clarity, and I hope some real encouragement, maybe an end to the condemnation of business by some of our nation's leaders would also help.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but as far as actual policies, are you saying, for example, the Bush tax cut should be extended for everyone?
Well, I'd reframe the question and say it seems like a highly suspect time to be raising taxes on a fragile economy that I honestly think is in at least as much danger of dipping further as recovering strongly. I mean, I threw out a few ideas a couple weeks ago. I honestly think we need an emergency commitment to growth that could include both more dollars in taxpayers' pockets, perhaps through some holiday in the payroll tax, at least a period of expensing to encourage business investment, which, as we know, is money sitting in the mattresses right now. And a huge area, I believe, a negative factor today is the incredible tsunami of regulations which either is or is impending in the economy, and some sort of bold policy that indicates that we have at least an interruption in that would help a lot.
And, of course, you have a record of competence and fiscal restraint from your days at the Office of Management and Budget. How would you balance the budget here in the United States for the country? Can it be done? Can you get your arms around the deficit?
I think we have to assume we can. I think we all know that the most important thing we could do, certainly economically, would be to make a bold stroke against the trillions of dollars of obligations that we have stacked up in the entitlement programs. This way will not balance the budget in the near term, but it will send a very powerful signal, I think, to the world, to ourselves for that matter, that the United States intends to remain an economic powerhouse for a long time to come. You know, it's a little ironic, but we've usually thought about measures of so-called austerity measures as working against growth. I think in the current situation, the first principle of a long-term growth plan for the country is to demonstrate seriousness. We're not going to simply throw our hands up and go over Niagara in terms of the debt. In the nearer term, I favor measures like impoundment power, reinstatement of that power in the executive branch. In states like ours, we've taken huge amounts out of government when the legislature delegated this opportunity to the executive. And we found you can do this in ways the average citizen really doesn't miss.
And, of course, after 5 years in the State House, you've managed to lower property taxes by an average of 30%, transform a $200 million deficit into a surplus of $1.3 billion, and ensure 45,000 low-income people through a budget-neutral combination of health savings accounts and catastrophic coverage. And yet you still have unemployment of better than 10% in Indiana. How are you going to get your arms around that jobs problem?
Our entire policy, in fact, most of the things you just mentioned, really is aimed at building the best jobs climate in America. Every rating now has Indiana, along with a handful of Sunbelt states, as the best place for investment in jobs. And in fact, this year, we've been adding private sector jobs at the highest rate in America, 4 times, Maria, the national average. The problem is the national average is so pathetically low. We have not moved our unemployment rate here principally because workers are less discouraged and the denominator goes up. Every time we add jobs, somebody else decides to return to the workforce, which is a good thing, but it is a measure of how difficult and slow it's going to be to get this any state or back where it was a few years ago until the national economy goes on a real growth footing.
You've been critical of President Obama's federal stimulus plan. Now your state took the money. How was that money spent, and what's wrong with the stimulus plan from your standpoint?
What I criticized was not the idea, at least initially in the emergency days of early 09, of having some kind of fiscal component along with monetary policy. Now, the way they did it, I do think, honestly, could have been much, much better. They engaged in trickle-down government. Almost all the money poured into keeping government workers on the job. Government employment actually went up while private employment was imploding. And that didn't do much of anything for the productive economy that on which everything else rests. The implementation, the way they chose to do it, I thought could have been far better if you really wanted to get the important sector of society back on its feet.
Talk to me about the Tea Party movement, Governor. This really has become sort of a big part of the Republican agenda. What is the Tea Party movement about? Why has it become so important to the Republican Party?
I don't know how important it is to the Republican Party. I think it's important to America. I think that, as best I can tell, this is a very authentic uprising of people who recoiled from the extremism, the shock and awe statism, I once termed it, of the Obama administration, as industry after industry was either bailed out or taken over, enormous amounts added to the debt of this country, and people began to see that our future was threatened and that the freedoms they hold dear were threatened. So I think that they have performed a very useful service by bringing these issues to the attention of their fellow citizens and bringing some new energy to the process. Now, it's fair to say that at some point soon, the topic at these rallies will need to turn from what is wrong and what the excesses might bring to what we're going to do about it. And I think it's very fair to say that the movement will be measured and judged on whether it makes that transition.
What do you say to the critics who say the Republican Party has been the party of no and is not going along with the president's proposals on economic growth?
Well, first of all, the president doesn't have any economic growth proposals that I know of. If he'd assembled a team of Nobel laureates and said, please give me a program to stop job creation cold, stop investment, paralyze business, he couldn't have done better than what they've been doing. So indicating disagreement with that, I think, is the first step toward getting this thing right. But, I think it's been a bum rap, at least for a long time. The people I read about in the Republican Party in Washington have tried some better ideas, for instance, on health care, a completely different approach and a much better one, but they've been drowned out. Their numbers are too few right now for them to get much attention, let alone pass anything. Maybe that'll look a little different in a few weeks. So
many people are looking at your record and thinking, this is our guy for 2012. Are you going to be the Republican candidate?
Well, I wouldn't count on that. This is something I've not ever really thought about doing. I've agreed to keep an open mind, but my mind right now and all my time and attention is right on the problems of Indiana and the challenges we're facing and trying to keep our state in the black, trying to avoid raising taxes as most other states have had to do, and thereby remaining or even improving our position as the best business climate around. That's a big enough job for now. But,
there's a lot of disappointment about where this country is and where it might be headed. Even the president's supporters have become somewhat disappointed because of redistribution of wealth and higher taxes and, of course, health care. Would you vote to repeal health care?
I would. Yes, I would. I think it was a disastrous mistake, and it's already becoming quite apparent. It's going to raise the national debt, not reduce it. It's going to raise health care costs, not reduce them. It is going to cause millions of people to lose the coverage they have. In a dead end, the very worst option is full speed ahead. So, yes, I think it ought to be repealed and can and should be replaced with policies that as we have implemented here successfully in Indiana, trust citizens to make these decisions empower them with the funds to pay for routine health care costs as they see necessary, and then protect them in true insurance fashion against that expensive injury or illness if it comes.
Of course, you are speaking right now to a business audience. Many business leaders have complained about the expense of health care. Give us a sense of the most important policies that need to be changed to, in fact, encourage business to create jobs and turn around this employment situation.
Oh, I think, first of all, establishing that taxes will not go up. Again, I would certainly offer some acceleration or even expensing option for business. We know there are trillions of dollars on the sidelines, trying to encourage them to be deployed. Some sort of indication that they're not going to plunge ahead mindlessly with these hundreds of new rulemakings that the outcome of which nobody can foresee. Some sort of moratorium on that, I think, would be the most immediate steps that could be taken. Again, I would couple that with some payroll tax relief, more than offset by spending reductions that show we're equally serious about reducing deficits and debt over time.
And that debt, of course, coming in at $14 trillion, it's a big number. Most people really can't get their arms around it. As far as attacking that debt, long-term debt, what will it take?
It'll take a bifurcation of the entitlement programs, hold harmless or hold as is, all those in or near retirement today, but new compact with the younger people who have to pay for all this. Again, the deficit-reducing effects of that would be a few years off, but I think it would have a powerful positive effect on confidence, on investments, certainly on shoring up the dollar. You know, people talk, Maria, about the debt problem as though if we don't fix it, we'll have this long, slow, gradual decline. I think you know that that decline could become much more sudden. It could be in the form of an emergency, and we really cannot leave that possibility out there if we can do anything about it.
Well, Governor Daniels may sound like he's considering a run for president in 2 years. We'll keep watching that story. Up next, some thoughts on